Oh, hi.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. There you go. So we'll see who else is joining us, and then we'll see what we can accomplish today. Oof.
Let me just log into the various locations so that we can take some notes.
All right.
I suppose, strictly speaking, we should start our own meeting page, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, talk amongst yourselves whilst I get this done. Hmm.
Do you got things?
Yeah, I've got to copy over the template for pages. Risk assessment. Mm. Okay, I'll have to let's not waste time in this session. Have to adapt this page. Recording. So, routine.
Is it just going to be us?
Yeah, this is the Risk Assessment and Harms Prevention Task Force, so I think it will just be us. Maybe Martina joined last week, but normally it's just Scott and me. So you're very welcome,
Okay.
Sankashan, of course. But we try to do the work and then just headline it in the meeting tomorrow for the whole working group. And I think this week we need to come after the credentials task force because we've, just for a bit better balance. So let's
Yeah,
share
we were taking up
screen.
all the time. So I think, and we needed a time. So we got a couple things together. We have a time to meet that's sponsored by Trust Over IP, not. And look at that, we have Kevin joining us. Oh, Kevin.
Hello, all. I'm on a slow internet connection, so I'll be just listening in, please. Hi, Scott.
Okay.
Hey, Nikki.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Mm. Good, good. Thanks.
Good.
Christian.
I noticed you'd made some comments in the context documents. So hopefully we'll
Yeah, I've
be
already
able to.
started. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, I've just started going through the material, so I'm playing catch up.
Well, that's actually, so this is the context document. And actually, it's a copy paste of a document done for another task force. So you're
Ah,
probably ahead of the game with us. So,
ah,
purpose of the
I was.
ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering about the
So,
blockchain stuff.
yeah. So that was done. It was done. We just thought we'd use this process of setting out the context. So, for
Okay.
example, this.
Yeah.
As you say, not relevant. It was the blockchain was a new thing.
Okay. 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 Good. Oof. I was going. Oh, what?
You were just cast back in time a decade or more.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's weird, but I'm at the Dow incubator gathering in Guatemala,
oh
so a lot of
wow,
blockchain being
cool.
discussed here.
Yeah, there's still a lot of the relevance and importance hasn't changed, but this was for another ecosystem. So, Scott, where we are in this document, we've got to this stage with this diagram where we know what we need to do, and we're going to highlight the context document and define the terms, but I think we can put them all at the end and do them as we go. There needs to be a better description in here, and we need to, I think, we do need a few use cases. So let me put this down here. Uh, so that can all go at the bottom. Obviously, this model's now been updated quite a lot, but I think the essence of it remains the same. We don't need this.
That busy picture over there is very familiar. I was working on that for years. Um, so, we're trying to use regurgitated information, things that we've already thought through. And Yoma was a good idea since Nikki was active on the project and using it as an application. Um, the next step that we need to do is we have at least some basis for a broader scope, which is, obviously the scope can be drilled down for other purposes, but really for the risk assessment, we needed to get to a detailed level that's still high enough where we can then start identifying risk buckets. And I think we're there. We just now need to get the diagram that we show here into the other risk assessment worksheet, which is what we'll start working against. So one thing you can do, Nikki, by the way, is take the sticky note on the right-hand side, because it seemed that, oh, there we go. I just thought it and it went away. Amazing.
Okay, so we need
Um,
to now cross-reference these with the areas in the assessment worksheet. Yeah?
right, right. So are we on topics? I didn't want to lose you guys. So the risk assessment worksheet is the area where we'll identify risk categories and risks and brainstorm risks associated with those groupings. Once we have that to some degree, then we can start triaging them to see which ones, after you apply likelihood and severity of outcome, which are the ones that make sense for the working group to make sure that they have requirements if we are choosing to mitigate using requirements. Uh, and then once we have that done, then we can then put out some guidance regarding the requirements and what are the types of requirements that we need to see in and that would be carried forward with the other working groups. Certainly the harms would be, would stay in this working group, and we would feed our harms requirements into the governance. We may need another task force for governance requirements, but I'd say let's wait on that until we actually finish this work.
So, Scott, I wanted to ask, in this diagram, the things in bold are in scope. Sorry, the things in bold are in scope. Uh, whereas the things that are in not in bold are out of our scope. So, for example, the ecosystem governance framework, the governing authority risks would be out of scope for us. So if we go back to the spreadsheet, uh, this first category of risks, governance authority risks, are they in or out of our scope?
Well, go back. Let's define governance authority.
Governing authority is there.
Governing authority, yeah. Um, I'd say, there it's out of scope because that is something that we now what we could do is we could identify it and then just say out of scope so that basically this document is an input for and a worksheet for governing authorities that are building like the first person project. Okay, and it's a great example because they're definitely going to use this. So then if we just say out of scope, then the first person project first thing they have to do is they have to build that out. What is the first person project? The governance authority and the structure, for example, that Drummond is putting together, what are the risks are they facing? And they have risks. I mean, they're setting up a certain legal structure. What's the risks associated with that? What's the acceptance of that structure? People can say it's all great. Drummond just set this all up, but I don't have to follow it. Why would I do that? And that's a risk. So I don't want to lose that because if we don't put the out of scope areas, then the users of this may ignore it and not consider those things. So we could put all out of scope risks in the bottom and just map the out of scope into just one line item and just so that the users of this document don't lose it. And that's what I would suggest. So basically, what I see you doing first is mapping the picture to this, So then now we have an anchor for this worksheet, and then we can start working with the worksheet and not have to necessarily review. We'll
Yeah.
have to, I'm sure, consult with the diagram, but at least we have a complete inventory
So
of the
Sankarshan has
kinds of
his hand up,
risks.
Scott.
Oh, go ahead, Sankarshan.
I had a question, Scott, while I was listening to you explain this. So, I think both you and Nikki started off discussing scope and kind of trying to narrow down in terms of what is in and out of scope. Uh, my perspective is that this task force provides a sort of comprehensive perspective on the nature of risk and harms, and collecting all of them and being able to sort of like select and put them into relevant bucket, like certain sets of risks originate from absent or lose or lacks governance, and all of that provides valuable input to the teams who are, or the task forces who are focused on that particular topic, to be able to then ingest that feedback and input from this task force and determine whether they have the scaffolding in place to either address that risk, mitigate that risk, or just say, this is acceptable, we acknowledge the risk, and we still want to go forward. So I think like you said, the scope conversation for this task force might just be, in my mind, a bit less restrictive than it is for other task forces.
I
We're just
agree.
trying
It's
to
less.
focus our time. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't drill, and that's why we're just trying to put things on the map. You know, that's basically what we're doing. I heard what you said, and the thing that I would say that you didn't say, which is when you approach it, so we're approaching this as a trust over IP project. And what's important around that is to identify what we are going to do within Trust over IP, the working group, and what we're not. And I think that's a residual benefit of this exercise. Because if we don't do that, then we don't provide the guidance. And that's the concern I have with a project like First Person Project. They won't really use this if we're not giving them, oh, okay, here's the universe and here's your piece that you have to work on. So I think that that's absolutely critical. And what I've seen in using some of the material that I've created and assisted in the Trust over IP, if it becomes more reliable, then it's going to be more useful in the marketplace. So I'm trying to provide something, for example, very useful for the first person project, but clear to Drummond and others who are doing these types of trust graphs that we're claiming this is what you can use and this is what we're not addressing. And that's what has kind of emerged in here that I think is very valuable, especially, I've seen it in situations where we could get into some of these task forces and they can be just spending hours discussing scope. And what I found, even when I was, doing this kind of work for the C2PA, that was what was happening. I came in with a methodology on the governance framework, and I said, these are the things that we're going to address. Let's not talk about all the other things that you're just pontificating about. And then you're also talking about how we're going to address it here. Here's the model. I have how we'll address it, and we'll have all the things that you need to think about. I want you to fill in the blanks. And then the process became so much more productive. So we're trying, this process is taking the world of a million risks, a large percentage that can't be addressed by this project, And that's the way it kind of, smart people kind of think. They're trying to boil the ocean, and that's not the purpose. So we just need to say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And what emerged is especially the purple. The purple is really what I think needs to get nailed down at the working group level, so that because we don't expect that the communities are going to focus on the purple box. And then now we can say, don't focus on the purple box. We have it all figured out. Use it as you see fit. Focus on the yellow box because we're not spending much time there. We don't know your context.
Where are
So
these yellow and purple boxes that you speak of?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Where are these yellow and purple boxes that you speak of? Because I see a
Yeah,
spreadsheet on
it's
screen.
not really a box, it's an oval, but it's here.
Ah,
So
oh, I
if
see.
you,
Okay. Okay. All
right.
right.
So if
All
you
right.
see, we wanted to focus, okay, what are we doing in that group? Okay, we're doing a risk assessment and we're going to build out these technology and governance and human experience requirements in the group. We expect these to be, that's where the focus and the effort will be. They're going to create schemas and there's task forces associated with that. We are also going to address the green box, and because that gets down to the usage of any, this is at the individual level. So any community is going to expect that the green box requirements have been fulfilled, and that they are expecting that any community is going to accept these things that have been built out in the green. And then, Drummond brought in the blue. The blue is the closest to the yellow, I think, because he felt that there was some standards for all community managers that have some synergies around that. So I am less familiar with how that's going to work, but that's how I think it's going to work out. And is it even the way you put where the things are, Nikki, I think makes a lot of sense because the lowest level is the green and then it goes to the blue and the broader community is the yellow. And they all use the purple because those are infrastructure risks and controls.
Right. Okay. So then I think you and Nikki have been exploring, examining the scope that is bound by the purple box for a while now. So are there anything uh, additional to what you have already created in your body of work that needs to be documented, or is it something that needs to be sort of reframed for this particular exercise? Because to me, when I look at this, it seems like there's a sizable part of the work that between the two of you, have already had a body of work published, available, and ready to be provided as guidance to others.
Right. So good question. And I think what we came up with is for the scope of the risk assessment, we're definitely at that level. Maybe even a little more done. Will there be things that pop up that would alter the scope or get more clarity in the scope? We anticipate it is, but I believe that will be in the task forces developing some of these individual bubbles inside the bubbles. Like, oh, we missed this whole category of risk dealing with certain technology requirements, but it's still maybe in the broader category of technology requirements. Or there's something that'll pop up that we didn't think of. So I definitely think that this isn't the last, but for the risk assessment, I think this is ready to move forward. And I do believe that the scope of the project will probably be different than this, at the end of it. and then we may have to, let's see if we have to adjust, the risk assessment and such after we get feedback. But, this is kind of my view around risk assessment is a two process. One is you use risk assessment to drive the requirements generation, and then you let it mature and let you put it out there. And in most cases, you actually execute it and get feedback, and then you adjust. So what I say that we need to do here is I think we're good here. And if we get stuck in the scope, we'll never get it's right now to the point where excuse me, it's the productivity would be better if we just put this on the transfer this
Put it on the
information to the
spreadsheet and
spreadsheet.
work our way
And
through
then
it. That's what we
right,
agreed to do. Yeah.
right.
So
Okay,
let's
so
do
that's
this
good.
initial mapping. And as you say, Sankarshan, there's for many of these risks in categories in the spreadsheet, there's already a completed risk assessment that we did for myoma, which is not going to be 100% correct. Of course it isn't. It's got a different scope. But um, you can see here, uh, because we use this risk assessment process, some of the ones that are less novel in decentralized trust graph, like governance authority, uh, we can borrow and learn from those and use. This was done for a governance framework, and so the controls were mainly in governance. But I guess that dictates requirements that we publish as a result of the risk assessment. So I put a column in for mapping, as you saw. So I've put the communities mapped to the administering authority, issuer, verifier, holder. Remember, this was originally wallet risks, but you didn't want to call it wallet.
When we built this original template out, we didn't have the concept of a wallet. How's that? So this was started,
Credential
4
holder.
years ago. Yeah, it was started 4 years ago. So we didn't really start the concept of a digital wallet. This was
And
really
these
built
are,
on the triangles. It was built on the triangle, basically.
yeah, okay. Credential holder given. So holder risks. So that's in the personal network manager. Green box.
Yeah, I do love that. I like them. Yeah, I like the mapping. But what I see we're doing is we're taking this whatever spitballs are on the worksheet and then trying to categorize it. I think we should do the other, which is take what's on the diagram, create the categories, and then let's see if there are risks that we can just then put into the categories that we create. Because if we do it this way, I think we may miss something. But either way, if we get there, I'll leave it up to you since you're working the document here.
So you'd rather like delete all of the grey rows.
No, I would, I just push it down and not work those. The first thing that we should work is just applying, right, the
Okay,
the
let's
the
start at the
categories.
bottom and
So
work up. So community governance of credential usage scheme owner. We
Okay.
haven't got an end. This is such a confused picture at this stage that we haven't got an entity owner, but it would be the community governance framework, wouldn't it?
Okay. So what I think we should do that makes it easier is we should have maybe two levels of index. One is at, yellow box level, you know, and then have subcategories of those topics inside the yellow box. And so then people would say, oh, okay, now I know where now I have the direct correlation. So we should start with DTG communities, and then just start in with a whole bunch of the white rows just to create the structure, have that done, and then we can see if there are gray boxes that we can then start if there are some, populate it. If not, then we leave it blank and then we start thinking about that as a next step. So that at the end of the day, it would be good to have at least one or two risks for every small little bubble in that diagram.
Yeah, so I like certainly when we did the work with Yoma, we didn't start with the bubbles. We started with the functionality of the system, what it had to do for its stakeholders. And in the case of Yoma, that's obviously, you know, opportunities, CVs, things like that. Um, and so I wonder if it's worth thinking about some of those core functions. For example, issuing and receiving a relationship credential.
My concern with that is then how do we know we have, how do we know we're complete?
Well, we don't know we're complete, but
Right.
we're complete for that use case. And it builds up over time. It's just, I'm just thinking about a way in, and I feel that unless we have, for example, the documented requirements from Linux or uh, at least some scenarios, then it's very difficult to talk about risks and harms.
Okay. So I think the difference between Yoma and this is Yoma had a use case that it was driving to its completion. This does not. This is a set of considerations and a starting point for ecosystems like the Linux Foundation could use. So by its nature, it will be incomplete. So
Okay, let's get some work done then. We've got 25 minutes left. Let's put these categories in and do the top-down approach. Okay,
right,
so we start with DTG communities.
right. That would be the highest level.
Yeah.
And then under that, we have what are those bubbles?
Who are the actors or I mean, like I
Whatever,
say,
whatever is in, whatever's in that yellow
so we've
bubble.
got governing authority, administering authority.
Right.
Okay.
And see, that's where we can take some of the stuff that in the gray, because that's where it belongs. These are the things. So if someone's using it, like first person project, oh, these are the things that you need to think about when you're considering a governing authority. And then these are the things that you need to think about when you're creating an administering authority. And I have some experience with them.
I I I want to make a sorry, go ahead.
No, the only thing that I'm pondering is the next step would be the question, just ask the risk questions, and then we can say, do we have some pre-populated gray boxes that could apply to that? So that's the first question, and then where are we at with that? And do we have to fill in more just to brainstorm? And then we have at least a population of risks that we can then start triaging to see if it makes, and then get it to the finish line. But we're just creating the starting line at this point. So like I wouldn't worry about like these things. Those items that you mentioned, we could then later populate that in the governance because that's where it is. That's where it goes. And so I do think that once we get the categories in, then we can, because I think that the categories will drive some of the risk, the gray boxes to, we're going to, I think that there's going to be work done to modify the gray boxes that exist in the template because now we have better context of it.
Okay, so we added in the harms risk, uh,
Okay.
harms, so human entity harms. And then there'll be other entity harms, won't there?
Could be.
I hate
So do
Google
we have
Sheets.
all of, you were filling in all of the subcategories of the yellow boxes.
Yeah,
Did we
I
put all of
mean,
those in?
that's not really the best use of everyone's time to watch me transcribe things from one
I
application
get
to
that.
another. It's much more important that we focus on these big boxes. So I'd have thought the
Okay.
categories. Do we want to include trust registry as a separate item? I think we should.
Let's go back to the diagram. And I would
So trust
say that
registries within the
where is
community
that?
network manager. It's here.
Right, so I'd say it's right. That's where I put it.
Okay.
And there would be, the trust registry of trust registries would be in the out of scope
Yeah.
items that we should put, but we're not going to work. Because now, when we consider risk, we consider trust registry risk in the context of the community network manager, which that's different than what the template had. So it's good. We're personalizing this risk assessment worksheet that we pulled from Trust over IP specifically for this working group and the activities that we're working on, which makes perfect sense to me. So, whether, we do this during the time that we have here or we don't, we need to get it done. So I don't mind you filling out this while we're talking. So if Kevin and, Sankashan, maybe this is a better time to bring you up to speed if you have any questions. around the process, we can, make that productive while Nikki's kind of populating this.
Uh, okay, looks like I've got loads of work to get done. I wonder if, in fact, communities also have uh, persona. Because, for example, as a single organization or community, I can have multiple relationships with the same person. They can be an employee and a customer at the same time, uh, or a supplier and an alumni. I don't know. I wonder if they also have persona.
Um, well, the assumption is at the community level that everybody that's part of that community, the overriding requirement is that they have some kind of relationship with the community, whether they're part of a club, they're a member in an organization, So whereas in the personal, there are multiple personas, so you have to manage that. So, but in the community, it's all one, it's all the persona as it relate, the single persona as it relates to the community. So, that's why I think it doesn't necessarily have to have a bubble in it. The assumption is that it's the relationship that people have with that. So,
Mm. Well, this is very meditative. Um, I think next week we should obviously press on with this, but we should also look at the work that John Phillips did on scenarios where the relationship changes essentially and harms that could arise from that. So he did some work with Gemini and some thinking. So I think that's worth reviewing for next week. Does that make sense?
okay.
Or maybe I can review it and document the harms in a spreadsheet. Maybe that would be better for our process. Uh,
So if you don't have time today to complete at least populating, I think that would be good if we could just do that. If you don't have time, give me the
No,
links
well,
and I can populate it.
I mean, I'm just going to be putting these rows in, aren't I?
Yeah,
So
that's it.
I
That's
can
it.
do that without you requiring to watch me.
Okay.
And I
Then
promise to get it done for tomorrow. I think
okay.
it's the broad categories, and we've got all three of them now,
Okay.
unless we want
So
that outer box of D2G ecosystem as well.
right. So
Would you like the outer
on this,
box?
what what's out
Would
of
you
the box?
like the outer box?
Yes, put in those and say out of scope, just like we have that at the bottom, and identify all of those similar to what you've done to the DTG communities. Say, just put whatever it is out of scope and then identify these subcategories so that folks understand what we are not going to be focusing on within this project. And that users of this material that are creating their own communities may have to consider these things. And we could document that and explain that.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna have the DTG ecosystem with that out of scope with a bunch of things so that and it's out of scope, we could throw it in. We probably shouldn't triage it, but we could, if we have some things that apply that folks can consider, I think it's important. So the other thing is, I know we had like 12 minutes left. And you're, heads down, working on this. The other option is just to call this a call and then we're not hanging watching you populate the form. Does anybody have any other questions? And no, or I can hang with you. I enjoy
No, no,
hanging with
that's
you
fine.
to deal
So,
with the questions that you may have. Like, seems like you're still having some questions about how to categorize things. So,
yeah, so I've got these main categories of the bigger boxes, and then from a previous discussions, we'd already called out agentic AI and AI risks. But I'll put those in their correct boxes. Um,
right. Do we have agentic AI in the diagram at all?
yes, we have AI agents in both the
Okay,
community
so let's
network
put, yeah,
manager and
right.
the,
We want to put it in its proper category. That's good.
okay.
So,
Uh,
so I'll hang with you if you
so
want,
should
or
we remove process and life cycle risks?
I think from a category standpoint, I think we should only have the categories that are in the document, in the picture. Because that was the purpose of the picture. We couldn't really see it and said, oh, it's best to draw a picture. And then you could pull the thing from Yoma. And I said, yeah, that's good. That definitely creates clarity.
So I
So,
wonder if there are, we've got human entity harms risks, but I wonder if we have the same for,
all right. Thanks, Sankashan.
okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you for joining. Sorry, it's not the best organized call. If there are also risks to other entity types, but let just leave that for the time being. Uh, Personal network manager, and then we go into the other stuff. So these are almost subcategories, aren't they?
Yeah. Everything that all those are subcategories that we can then look at and ask the question, well, okay, you have categories and you're asking to create some specifications around it. Specifications to prevent what kind of risk? And that's those are the questions that will populate the row items under each one of these subcategories. Why do we, and it pressure tests all those items. And it also, like you had mentioned, creates potential for new boxes to come in. So I don't think we're done with the box, with the diagram. The diagram will be filled out after we start asking those questions. What are we trying to do here? And because I look at all of those sub bullet items as categories of requirements. And if we have a new category we didn't think about, then at least we know where to put it.
I kind of feel like the only substantive difference between them is these two in the community network manager
Which to the trust registry and the
and the
type
type catalog.
catalog.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wasn't familiar with, I know what a trust registry is. What is a type catalog in your,
Relates to the schema that you accept and the semantics around the data that you're processing.
okay. So what would be
There's,
a type? Would it be a type of credential, a
yeah, it
type
could
of
be a type of
schema?
credential or a data item, like could be geospatial data, and that's particular format and standard and things like that. So it kind
Yeah,
of does, but
yeah, I'm not a
if you're
fan of the
looking for
word type.
interop, Trust Registry does one layer, like the network layer, the technical layer, and the type catalog enables semantic interop at some
Well,
level. There's other
yeah,
stuff
I
involved
would,
in it.
if it would, what makes sense to me is to change the word type to schema. Because then we say the community. So we're going to build out all these schemas at the lowest level, right? Going to build out VRC schema, the PHC, and the R cards. Okay, that's definitely on the radar here. The community is going to say, okay, what's the list? What schemas are we going to accept of those defined, maybe broadly, there's maybe a
So
broad
these are
schema.
really just
Are there,
schema
yeah,
and pred defs, aren't they?
red defs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think we'll take, if I'm a community manager, I would look at the generic schema in the purple box and say, okay, do I need to personalize it for my community? Okay, let's say it's the, community would be Linux Foundation. Is the Linux Foundation going to use all the schema, generic schema that's developed by the working group for VRCs, or they're going to do some modifications for their specific community use?
Mm.
That's how I, that's kind of how I do that.
Okay. Can I drop something in the last 5 minutes, or
No,
because
that's,
this is not
Yeah,
this may
please.
be okay. This may be out of scope. I've been looking at Grace Rahmani's Sideways.Earth proposal, where she's talking about communities need identification as well, because people need a way to operate within multiple communities and have credentials within those communities so that when they enter a new community, say for instance, in the open source software
Right.
world, if somebody's coming into the Linux Foundation, if they can have credentials that come from another OSS community, might be helpful. But I'm thinking that might also be out of scope for now.
Well, I no, I think it's just germane to exactly what we were talking about, which is
Right,
um, you have a community and they say, okay, what's the schema that we'll accept within the community? And the question comes down
right.
to you got two choices. You got the bare bones specifications in the green box, well, not the green box, the purple box, and
Mhm.
you have existing schemas that are out in the marketplace that may apply. For example,
Okay.
the Linux kernel may take schemas from other Linux projects. Or maybe there's Linux decides to have a VRC for the Linux Foundation, and then
Mhm.
the kernel projects decides to use this but modify it to another level of assurance,
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
so certainly all of
Okay.
that plays into effect. It's the choices, and then the risks are associated with, okay, is the schema, the generic schemas that are available, right for my specific community?
Right, right. And then that is the compatibility between communities. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for
Right, and
that.
that's a risk. That's a risk, right? So we identify the risk.
Yeah.
Is the compatible, is the schemas that we have compatible with my community? That would be a risk that we would identify under that schema, under that category list. And if we
Right,
deem not, then the community has to include consideration specifications for either, what are they going to do? They're going to take either the generic one or take one that's available. That's the specification that they would make the choice to do. And, we're reducing risk by coming up with interoperable kind of focus standards in the purple box. The risk
right.
is if we didn't have the purple box, then everybody would be creating their own version that may not be interoperable with the VHC and the personhood credential. That's the reason why I believe we need to have, that's why we're focusing a lot of energy on the purple box, is we come up with an interoperable standard of the core things that need to be interoperable. Now, I would say the things that the Linux Foundation or the kernel project would use would be inside the interoperability. Okay. It can still be extensively used, but for this community, we're going to add more requirements. And the risk is, that it would not be interoperable. So we have to make sure that we define in the schema areas that wouldn't break that interoperability.
Right, right. And then there would be the human factor, which is how how to put this how rigorous or how protected is that schema within each community. It may be real weak
Right.
in one community, very strong in another community.
Right. And that goes to the governance of the community. Are they holding people accountable to the schema? If they
Right.
don't, then the
Trust is
risk is that the schema, as you admit, see, there you go. Now you're doing a risk assessment. You would say, and because a community isn't really, if a schema doesn't hold themselves accountable to it, it makes it difficult to be relied upon.
right. Each community would make its own its own determination whether it accepts this other community's. Yeah.
Correct. And so that's the basis of this broader scheme. which is something I've been working on for 10 years, which is it with a governance process, you identify how much accountability each ecosystem has. So they need to do two things. They need to publish their governance framework so you know what schemas they're using and you know how much accountability they are to the requirements that they have. And so then outside of that ecosystem, I can make an informed choice whether to rely upon that or not. Right? Because in a
Right. Nice.
decentralized governance structure, I can't dictate. I can only look, for example, in the United States,
Exactly.
the Department of Homeland Security looked at all of the states' digital driver's license to determine if the structure and the governance and the accountability within the states allowed them to be relied upon to pass the security gate. So they didn't create all these MDLs, okay? But they looked at the MDL governance to see if it was reliable for their context. And that's exactly
Right.
how it's going to play out globally.
Yeah.
It does now and it
Yeah.
will continue to do is
Yeah.
in this case, the Homeland Security cannot dictate to the states. They can provide some governance, and Real ID is really what they did. They said, here's the specification that the Homeland Security needs in order for you to use your MDL or whatever, or use your physical
Hmm.
card to pass the
Hmm.
security gate. And then the
Yeah.
states they looked at it for years. A couple of states said, like Washington, where I live, they said, nah, I'm not going to do it until the Homeland Security said, well, by this date, you're not going to be able to to use what you have. And either the states
Yeah.
accepted that or they didn't. Now, in Washington, they have a variant of their driver's license called enhanced security that meets the requirement. And then they have to let people, the government, when you go to the airport in Washington state, they're going to say that, oh, by the way, you need an enhanced driver's license from Washington to pass our gates, period. And it's up to the people to subscribe to that. Today, they just came out and said there's no alternative. In the paper today, they said 94% of people going to the airport in the United States have a Real ID credential. And what they were doing is if you didn't, then they would add more screening. So today they said starting in
Mm-hmm.
February, this is all governance, right? Starting in
Mm-hmm.
February, since we have to do additional work for the 6%
Right.
that's not Real ID compliant, you're going to have to pay $45 as a fine
I saw
every
that.
time.
Yeah.
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 So that's how
So
it's all
there.
working.
Yeah. I like that. So eventually the ecosystem comes up with an auditing process and certification, and that
If
could be
they
another
want
way
it to be
to
more reliable, if they
yeah.
want
Right. Yeah.
the governance that they have within to be relied upon outside, to be
Right.
relied upon
Right.
within the community and without the community, they need to add more accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But that's not for this standard. That's part of community governance framework.
Well, we're contributing to that.
Yeah.
So in this, we're creating the architecture and the framework whereby communities can make choices. We've decided that the community isn't necessarily, we don't want the community to make choices around the VHC schema. Let's do that within the project because everyone's going to need that, right? So, okay, and that's why it was great to have this diagram. We isolated the things that we need to work on as a working group that would be applicable to everybody,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
and so that I think was the breakthrough aha. And I applaud Nikki for creating that because that really
Mhm.
put it in clarity for me. And it's
Okay.
just so that diagram is really
Yeah.
justifying the work we're doing. And
Hmm.
it also justifies when someone is looking at this work, they know what they can take out of it and what they have to build themselves.
Aha. Okay. Nice. Thank you for explaining all that. Yeah.
All right, I see we're over time, so I don't want to belabor.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
by the way, you know, I'm talking today with Mike Schwartz on the Identarati today in about an hour, or now it's 2 hours. So if you I think he's made public posts about that, you know, if you want to join. I don't know how many people join his sessions, but he wanted to talk about governance. So I said, sure,
Yeah.
you know, another person to talk
How
about the need for governance.
how do I find that event?
Go to Idinner. Let me see. I'm having difficulty getting LinkedIn from from my laptop, but let me see. I think it should be attached to if you go to you search Identarati.
Okay. Where's the garage? Mhm.
Yeah, if you do that, then well, it links to my post for the event today. So that, or if you go to me, and I had made a post, and I made the post 3 weeks ago, so that's a way to get there too.
Okay. 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 I'll look for that.
Yeah.
Thanks. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, tell your friends. All right, Nikki, I'm
Uh,
gonna leave.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
gonna
good?
I think we're done.
mhm.
I
Yeah, and we made progress. Come on, Nikki, we
we
made
have made
progress.
some
Mhm.
progress.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
We brought in
we
two more people, and you know, and then we posted this, and
we're
you know,
official. Yeah, we've got our categories. We're good to go.
all
Rightio.
right. Thank
Take
you so
care, guys.
much.
See you
I
tomorrow. Oh, I
really
won't see you
appreciate you.
tomorrow. I'm sorry, I can't. I've got a 2-day client workshop over the next
All
couple of
right,
days.
so
So
can you send me even just send me on Signal even if you can send me the links to all this information, which I should have access to, but I it would be good if you could just do that and then I can determine whether I do have access so I can present what we're doing. Okay?
yeah.
On your behalf.
Okay. Sounds
All right,
good.
thank you so much. All right,
Thanks.
take care,
Take care,
Kevin.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.